Restore us, O God of hosts. Let your face shine that we may be saved. Alrighty, everybody, welcome to another show, Restore, with me, your host, David C. McGuire. I know if you're watching live or you watch it later, you said, it's not the regular time. I know, but that's okay. There's a special broadcast we've got for you tonight. All right. So, of course, real quickly, let's see, here we go over there, and let's go. So make sure while you're here, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Restore with David C. McGuire. Like this video, share the video, and of course, you can always follow me over there on the interwebs and the social media platforms on X and Facebook over there as well. So there's that. So don't forget that. Don't forget to get the word out. You can text the video out, email it out, get it out by word of mouth. But in all honesty, this is going to be a super essential show. Now, we're going to be talking about the persecutions happening in Nigeria. Now, you know that I've been aware of this for a few years, right? But many of you may not be fully aware of what is happening over there. And I'm telling you, whatever your idea is, it's probably nowhere near as bad as the reality of what's going on over there. So I'm going to bring somebody on who's actually been over there a number of times. So he knows what's going on over there, experienced it firsthand, right? We're not talking about somebody who says, oh, well, I just know about it. No, he's been there, experienced it. And even right now, there's stuff happening, right? There's a great grave persecution happening of Christians, and there's nothing hyperbolic about it. So I want to really have you be aware of it. And so you can do that. And I have the link down there in the show description. And you can go to, there we go. There we go. Is that the right one? There it is right there. So that is called Equipping the Persecuted. Let me put it back over here. Make it better. There we go. So Equipping the Persecuted is the best place for you to start. The link is there. It'll, at least get you started being aware how to pray. And of course, you can always support, and you can also get the word out as well. So let me bring Pastor Sam Jones onto the show. Welcome, Sam.
David, how are you doing today? Thank you for having me on.
Oh, I'm doing well. And I thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure your schedule is very busy, but I'm so glad that you could come on.
Yeah, it's good to be on, and it's good to discuss this issue of Nigeria and what's happening over there because, like you said, a lot of people don't really know what's going on over in Nigeria. And right now, recently, it's kind of picked up some steam in the news, especially with President Trump speaking out for Nigeria, for the Christians in Nigeria.
Right.
And so, but I mean, it is... it's a really interesting time right now in Nigeria. But what is it you think the audience wants to know?
I'm sure that there are probably a boatload of people completely unaware of a lot of things over there, right? I mean, there's the dynamic, there's the Fulanis. I'm sure many people don't know what. If I say that word, they're probably like, the who? The what? Right? They probably have no idea of the Christians over there. When you look in the book of Revelation, right, and you see that without the mark of the beast, right, nobody can buy or sell, and how that is a very actual real day-to-day thing for Christians over there, right? And of course, there's the fact that the Nigerian government is playing a direct role in aiding and abetting and even equipping the Fulani tribesmen. So, yeah, how about that? How about you make people aware? First off, people are probably like, oh, no, you guys are just playing it up. It's not that bad over there. Well, how bad are the Fulani toward Christians then?
Yeah, just to kind of give a quick overview of what's happening over in Nigeria. So, over the last 5 years, 90% of the Christian persecution deaths, or
Mhm.
what you might call as martyrdoms,
Right.
has actually happened there in Nigeria. In fact, most of the time we look at it, and you have kind of between 4 and 5,000 persecution deaths directly every year. But this year, we're already over 7,000, is what we can
Mm.
quantify. And you could go over to Open Doors and see that they've got that broken down there too. You could go over to truthnigeria.com. And we've got lots of reports of these attacks that are happening there. And
Mm.
so it's a really heavy amount of just direct attacks that are happening where Christians are dying. They're dying on a daily basis. But on top of that, after these Christians are attacked, so what happens
Mhm.
is essentially Fulani, which I'll explain that in just a little bit. They
Right.
come down from the Islamic north,
Mm.
and they come down and they attack Christians right now in the middle belt, right in the middle of Nigeria,
Right.
and they attack their villages. And as they attack their villages, they end up destroying them. And so then the government comes in afterwards, and we'll talk a lot more about the government, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They come in and they move the Christian survivors hundreds of kilometers away. And as they move
Okay.
them hundreds of kilometers away, they just leave them there, and they become
Mm.
what's called internally displaced persons, or IDPs.
Okay.
And what we found is that there are probably conservative estimates of 3 million displaced Christians
Mm.
inside of Nigeria. And
Mm.
so, you look at the crazy number of 7,000 Christians
Mm.
that have died this year, over 7,000 Christians. But then you consider directly from attacks, but then you consider that there's 3 million that have been displaced in all of Nigeria.
Mm.
And then on top of that, you start to consider that, okay, 7,000 died from direct attacks. But then there are those who, after getting moved and having their village destroyed and all of this stuff, they end up starving to death. And then there's
Right.
those who end up dying of disease and poor hygiene, because you just lost everything that you had, literally have nothing, and are moved hundreds of kilometers away and just said, well, see ya, good
Right.
luck.
Right.
It,
So yeah, yeah, why don't you talk about that for a second then? Where you said
yeah,
they get everything, because I don't think people realize it. Like when I
yeah.
tell them that what we see that's going to play out on a huge, much bigger scale in the Book of Revelation is playing out there, because you say they die of starvation, they die of lack of medicine. Well, why
Mhm.
is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, they've had everything stripped from them. So I mean, they literally have just everything that's removed from them, and they're just have the clothes on their backs, and they're just dropped off in the middle of nowhere, and they're in a completely, I mean, not foreign land in a sense of it's their, it's still Nigeria, but
Right.
foreign in a sense of if we're in the United States, you're getting moved, clear across your state, or maybe even to the next state, or something to that nature. And so they're just left there. And they, like, literally, we've stumbled across IDP camps, these
Mm.
internally displaced person camps, that are um essentially, they're living in what we would call garbage bag tent
Mm.
houses, where they're just putting up garbage bags, trash that they found, and that's what they're living in.
So why
And
can't they get food then? Why can't they get medical? Can't they just go to the market and buy food, or go to the nearest clinic and get seen medically?
yeah, so they don't have, so they were farmers before, and so now they don't have land that they can work in that way. It wasn't a compensation. And then if they were to go to, like, the medical clinic in America, they're going to treat you before payment. Well, they're in Nigeria, you're going to have to pay up front, and
Mm.
so they're not going to accept them with that. And then when it comes to food and whatnot, well, you got to pay for that, and they literally have no money. And one of the craziest things that we've encountered over there, David,
Mm.
is actually USAID. So you've got USAID. Wow, we're gonna go help our the other nations.
Right, right, right.
And And we showed up to just one of these IDP camps that people are starving. There's all kinds of infections that are going
Right.
on. And do you know what USA brought them?
Mm.
2 really nice, who knows, probably $10,000 garbage cans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, just the culture there in Nigeria, they don't really have, I would say Nigeria is not very, Al Gore wouldn't be real happy over there in
Right. Right.
Nigeria.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
not real green.
Right.
Um, and so so our team's looking at this and they're like, this is what USAID brought you? Cause it's got, USAID right
Right.
there
Right.
on
Right.
it.
Right. Right.
And they're like, yeah, that's what we got.
So from previous stuff, I was told that when 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 they are become a Christian, that they get every asset seized from them, right? So if they did have money, if they had bank accounts, if they had assets, it gets taken away from them completely, and so they literally have nothing to their name on top of what you just talked about with the internally displaced camps where they have to live there. Is that close?
Yeah, so it depends on where you're at in Nigeria.
Okay.
You're exactly right. If you're up in northern Nigeria, which is mostly Muslim, that's up there. It's Muslim dominated. So they're basically coming from the north and they're working their way down, and that's why in the middle, that's where all this persecution deaths are happening.
Mm,
Um, it's because they're working their way down. So for a demographic to understand religiously where Nigeria is and really where they were, about 20 years ago, Nigeria was actually 70% Christian.
okay.
Um, and today, though, it's about 45% Christian. It's in the 50-50 range with slightly more Muslims,
Mm,
essentially. And so they've just been systemically marching their way down. And so if you do get saved in the north, and we've actually seen several Muslims get saved, turn to Jesus Christ in the north. And what we end up doing, because you're exactly right, what ends up happening is that they get everything stripped from them. They're persecuted up there if they don't just lose their life. It is basically those Christians that have been up there for some time, they get put under what's called jizya, which is a tax
oh,
there in
right.
order to just survive. But what we do is when we lead people to the Lord who are up north, we actually bring them down to safe houses in more Christian parts of Nigeria, because in the south it's almost it's predominantly Christian in
Okay.
southern Nigeria. And so we'll go and bring them into safe houses there, and then they will decide after some months of training on evangelism and discipleship and things like that. Do they want to go back and share the gospel with their family members, their friends, and their coworkers, or do they want to, go and remake a new life?
Mm,
Somewhere else where it would be safer for them. But yeah, I mean, when it's in the Muslim dominated areas where Sharia law is established, it is, you're basically property as
right.
Christians.
Right. Right. So you mentioned that Islamic tax, um, the jizya, I think, yeah, tax. So in case for the audience doesn't know, that is, so if everybody thinks Islam is nice and they can take over and treat everybody well you got nothing coming because now just for being non-Muslim, you have to pay extra money toward them. So I just want to let the audience know that in case they're wondering, hey, is it really that bad? Surely Islamic rule can't be that bad for Christians. But you're right, they have to pay extra. And on top of that, what do they really have to pay with anyways?
Right. Exactly. They don't have anything that they really can pay with anyway on all this. It's kind of wild when you stop and you really look at it in that way.
Right, right. So I think one thing I haven't discussed, and I think this is actually, in all honesty, um, I never really saw the play or the role that the Nigerian government has played in all of this. I wasn't really aware of it until recently. Um, so people, I think let's back a few months ago. I think Trump signed like an arms deal with the Nigerian government, and of course people started losing their minds. Obviously, because like, do you know where those weapons are going to go? And that's when I started looking. Oh, wait a minute. So So how bad is it with the Nigerian government's role, and what's happening then?
Yes, so that's a really good question. What is the Nigerians' government role? Because that's one of the big things that we always get asked is like, where's the
Mm,
government in this? When attacks happen, do they alert the police? Why isn't there intervention essentially? And let me tell you the story of the Yellowwater massacre, which happened Father's Day, or what we call the Father's Day massacre, where over
okay.
280 Christians lost their lives to
Mm,
the Fulani ethnic militia, which let me explain the Fulani really quick so that
okay.
people can understand. Um, so the Fulani is specifically a tribe, an African tribe there that is mostly predominantly Muslim, and they really follow in the footsteps of Boko Haram in the ideology. Which Boko Haram is essentially who was attacking the Christians in Nigeria and other northern parts of Africa earlier. You might also recognize the ideology by calling, if I use the words African ISIS
Mm,
or ISIS itself or Al Qaeda. It's all this same ideology.
right,
They're
right,
believing the same thing. Right now, the Fulani ethnic militia or the Fulani herdsmen are the ones that are making these attacks, but they are essentially Boko Haram. They are essentially ISIS.
mm,
It is a little bit more tribal in the sense of who they are, but it's the same ideology.
right, right, right.
Um, and uh, so what happened on the Father's Day massacre here in June of 2025, where over 280 Christians lost their lives, is you have this this village or this town, Yellowwater, and it's right on a major highway in between two major cities in Nigeria, and so right there they have two outposts within just a few kilometers of the city limits. So they thought that they would be fine.
Right.
One of the things that we do in our ministry, because we don't want to just give aid to those who are being persecuted. We actually want to stop the persecution. That's our goal. And so one of the things that we've done is we've started a terrorist alert system or when attacks are coming. And so we have people who are, aware and watching to see what's going on. And we've got communications that are happening. And so we see that there's going to be an attack. And
Mm-hmm.
so we alert the people there of Yellowwater. And we say, look, there's going to be an attack that's coming out. We put out our terror alert.
Right, right, right.
Excuse me. They believed that they were going to be fine because they have these two places, these two outposts essentially right next to them. And so they didn't do anything. We've
Ah,
actually seen villages evacuate before, and actually seen thousands of lives saved, essentially from these terror alerts because people did something. We also alerted the Nigerian government,
mm-hmm.
and we alerted them days before it happened. We alerted it the day that it was going to happen. We're warning them when the attack started. The people of Yellowwater contacted the government because it happens at night. They contacted the government and they're letting them know, hey, this is happening.
Right.
This is happening. Send help. Send help. And what ends up happening is they don't send help. Over
Mm,
282 Christians are killed either from machete attacks
right, right, right.
or from being burned alive, where over 500 houses were razed and burnt to the ground. All of this is happening, and the Nigerian government doesn't lift a finger. They don't do anything.
Mm,
Now, some of you may have heard of this attack in Yellowwater because it was one of those that made it to the United States. Um, but the way that news works in Nigeria is very interesting as well.
okay.
So in America, anybody with a cell phone is basically a reporter, right?
Right,
That's
right,
how we've
right.
gotten today. But even beyond that, you've got independent news sources, you've got the Associated Press, you've got all this, but you basically we have the freedom of press, we have the freedom of speech. We could just theoretically we got the freedom of speech, but we
Right,
could
right.
just go out and report on the news. Well, in Nigeria, how it works is the government official will call a press conference
Okay.
if they want to call a press conference. And
Right.
so if this is an attack of like 20, 30, 40, 50, probably not going to call a press conference. And
Okay.
there's all these attacks where 20, 30, 40, 50 Christians die. And most of the time, no press conference, so never gets anywhere in the news outside of places like Truth Nigeria.
Right, right, right.
Um, and so what ends up happening is, let's say it gets to be over 100 people that have passed away. Well, you're going to have a tough time containing that. That's people are going to talk about that.
Right,
It's going to
right,
get
right.
out on social media. And so they'll hold a press conference. And then they'll give the official story as to what's happening there in Nigeria, and most of it's propaganda. Um, and so they'll say stuff, and instead of saying that it was the Fulani ethnic militia that is literally coming out to genocide Christians. Their goal is to eliminate Christians because they're on jihad. They'll go and say it was a farmer herder conflict,
Hmm.
or it was unknown bandits.
Okay.
But then, even worse than that, let's just say they actually told the truth. It was a good political official, and they actually told the truth, or it was a story that told the truth there in Nigeria. Reporter, it gets turned over to the Associated Press.
Mm.
Al Jazeera takes the Associated Press. They're part of
Right,
the Associated Press. They take the this, and of course, it runs through them, and so they
right,
sanitize it, and so that's what you're hearing in the West.
right, right, right. Yeah, I'm.
So
This is not something foreign to me, right? I was in Iraq three
yeah,
times. I saw Al Jazeera there firsthand.
yep,
What they did, you know, you're like, hey, there's an attack happening. What are you doing there already, waiting for it
exactly.
to happen? So a lot of people, I don't think a lot, and I have specialized training. I got to spot things in the media, anyways. That a lot of people don't pay attention to. So you're right. Like they don't tell you exactly who the attack. They might say an attack happened or Christians were killed, but there's nobody mentioned exactly what happened. So I'm glad you're highlighting that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that we've done to combat that, because we wanted to basically make sure that that wasn't what was happening. Um, for us is, or we wanted to alleviate this issue, is we went and we found some of the brave independent journalists and people who
Mm,
would be willing to go and to speak out from Nigeria, investigative journalists, and we gave them a platform there at Truth Nigeria. And so that's one of the big things that we've done, because we understand one of the biggest issues that we face in this fight, this spiritual battle, really in Nigeria,
mm.
is people simply don't know what's going on, and
Right,
so we're
right,
trying to
right.
get word out. It's so if you want news from people who are literally on the ground, who are literally getting these stories, they're investigating them, they're right there, they're getting the personal interviews. I mean, there's no better place than truthnigeria
Mm,
.com right there,
right,
which I saw that you had up right here for the audience, which is awesome.
right, right. And I forgot to link it into the show description, but you guys out there, you can find it. All that link is on the Equipping the Persecuted website. That's how I found it
Yep.
on there as well. Um, so what else? So the Nigerian government is not just doesn't do anything about it, but I hear that they are also at times complicit in it as well.
Yeah. I mean, so right now you have a Muslim ticket, and I think they're for president and vice president in
Oh, okay.
Nigeria, and it's been that way, if I recall correctly, for the last 3 terms. They're in Nigeria, not the last three
Mm,
administrations, but the last 3 terms, and so I mean, when it comes to being Islamic and Muslim, as you know, if they are to follow the Quran in
mm-hmm.
Surah chapter 9, and they're to actually follow, the laws of abrogation and things like that. The Muslims themselves, they are inherently hostile towards Christianity.
Right, right, right.
There's no such thing truly as a peaceful Muslim. There is perhaps a thing of an apathetic Muslim, but not a
Oh,
truly
right, right.
peaceful Muslim.
Ooh,
And
that's a great point right there. Let me, yeah, I'm just because people, they look at this and they, many of them obviously there's no malice, right? They're just speaking from ignorance. They don't know
Mhm.
about Islam. They've never read any any of the surahs. They've never read the hadiths. They've never read anything like that. And of course, you see a lot of, like you said, Muslims that are peaceful, right? But like you
Mhm.
said, they're more apathetic, right? They're kind of, they're kind of like I'm Muslim when I want to be, right? And I saw that, believe it or not, that's a lot of Iraqis are kind of like that. You go around Ramadan and they're smoking cigarettes, and you're like, I thought you're not supposed to do that during Ramadan. And they're like,
Mhm.
it's okay, Mister. It's okay, maku mushkila, no problem. And so the real face of Islam, then you're seeing that playing out. This is the real off. This is not like, oh, because I'll say radical Islam, but this is Islam playing out on its truest scale then in Nigeria, right?
Yeah, well, and all you have to do is to look at the response to what President Trump said.
Mm,
So President Trump came out this weekend and said something that was incredibly powerful and important for what's happening in Nigeria, where he goes and he designates Nigeria as a country of particular concern.
mm,
Which I mean, it's ridiculous to think that there is any country that's a country of particular concern that's not Nigeria when 90% of the Christian persecution deaths are happening
right,
right
right.
there. I mean, it's insane to think that they weren't. Um, but then he comes out and he says basically, if the government doesn't stop, we would pursue sanctions. And then he actually took it even further and
Mm,
threatened military action.
right,
Well, the response from the Nigerian government was to come back and to say, look, basically to propagandize and to say, "Oh, no, 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 this isn't a genocide. This isn't Christians, being killed. This is farmer herder conflicts. This is
right.
a tribal conflict."
Mm,
Well, in what their proof is that Muslims die too. And it's true that Muslims have died in these attacks. The problem is that it's something like 20 to 1
right.
where Muslims might die. And then the other thing that they don't want to talk about is it is true that sometimes that the Fulani herdsmen, the Fulani ethnic militia, gets so hyped up that they might go and attack after attacking a Christian village on the way out. They might go and attack a Muslim village because they're literally berserkers at that
Oh,
point. I
right,
mean,
right.
and
Wow.
they might go and raise a village. We had a time a few years ago where we actually saw this happen, and there was a Muslim village that was attacked. And
Mm,
so we went because we knew their whole food supply was destroyed, along with
mm,
the Christian village, along with the church being burnt down, and all this and that. So we're building up a new church building. We're feeding the people. We're tending to medical wounds, and then we send a delegation over to go feed the Muslim village. And they look at us and they say, "Why would you do this? Don't you know it was our people who did this to us?"
right, right, right.
And our response was, "Yes, but Jesus Christ tells us to love our enemies, and we
Mm,
love you, and Jesus Christ loves you too." And we saw dozens of Muslims come to Christ that day.
mm,
Um, but but we look at this, and it's one of those things where the Muslim government, their response was to try to shove propaganda down our throats here in the West instead of just going and saying, "Yeah, actually, we do have a problem. We need to go and to do something about this." If this truly was a peaceful Muslim regime that was truly just seeking religious freedom and doing that thing instead of actually being a supportive or might I even say complicit Muslim regime,
mm,
they would have immediately stepped in and said, because let's be honest, who cares if it's Christian genocide or if it's or if it's one tribe trying to genocide another tribe?
right.
A government that actually wants to protect the innocent and punish the wicked is going
Right.
to step up and say, "We're going to stop that." But a
Exactly.
government that is complicit with these things is going to come out and say, "Actually, it's not a big deal. Nothing to see here."
Mm,
When the reality of it is that thousands of people are dying because they're being attacked for their Christian faith.
right. And I, you know what? Yeah. I think there a lot of Christians in America are very. I hate to. I don't want to hate saying, but we're a very different breed, right? Because we're very inured. We're very insulated from the happenings around the world, especially in northern Nigeria, right? That's not, it doesn't happen here to us, right? I can go to church on Sunday and I can live my life the rest of the week, just show back up to church on Sunday. And, people might say mean things about me, but that's as far as it goes. And so we don't think there's action that needs to be taken, right? And we get a very polarized this or this view, right? It's either
Right.
we give out food, we give out whatever needs to be given out, and that's as far as it goes. But we also don't take any other action. About making sense when because you mentioned how, hey, you guys do this, but I'm sure that there's other actions that should be taken besides handing out food or building schools. There should be a both an actual action of stopping the violence and as well bringing in the building of schools and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the work that we've been doing with, especially like bringing in schools and things like that, um, we have two schools. Both of them are IDP schools, or these internally
Mm,
displaced person schools. So when you look at this, um, one of the things we went to in one IDP camp, and they hadn't had um, any education for their children, and they didn't have any running water, so we drilled them a well, and they didn't have any education for their children for, I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 years off the top of my head now, and so we started a school there, and then we have another one, and so we've got 500 students between these two schools. We have an orphanage. We support over 350 widows on a monthly basis, where we're teaching them and training them vocational skills so that they can go and support themselves eventually. And so then we can add on more widows because there's a huge need for all of these things that's
mm,
happening in Nigeria. I mean, it's just incredible. But some of the other things that we've done, which is a little bit different than a lot of other ministries, one is that Truth Nigeria of giving an outlet to reporters
right.
that are there. Another one is literally putting up like tornado sirens, essentially.
Mm, okay.
And they're alarm systems so that when attacks are coming, or terrorists are being mobilized towards these villages, the sirens can go off and people can get to safety. It also scares the living daylights um, out of out of the terrorists, because they're not expecting a loud noise
Mm,
right as they're coming up for an attack, trying to sneak in. We've supplied so in Nigeria, they don't have a Second Amendment, so legally we can't supply like guns or ammunition or anything like that. But we can do bulletproof vests, and
mm,
so we've done that, and we've done training for first aid and trauma, battlefield type training,
right.
where it's how to apply tourniquets and what to do in these kinds of situations.
Mm,
Um, and so that's a lot of the type of and even some basic self-defense as well,
right.
in teaching those things, because um, I mean, when somebody's coming at you, the Fulani herdsmen, the Fulani ethnic militia, they come in with AKs, and they come in with machetes, is most of the time the two weapons of choice that they have.
Okay.
And so when they come in, if they mostly have machetes, simple self-defense can really save a lot of lives. And
Mm,
so really try to work on teaching and training those things,
right. Right.
getting radios for communications, things of that nature. uh, and I mean, it makes a world of difference. We've been able to put out um, a over 100 terrorist alerts, and with
Mm,
over a 90% accuracy.
right.
um, we've seen lots of lives being saved, but our goal is not just to see lives be saved, not just to come in and help out after lives have been lost and people have been maimed and displaced, but to actually stop the
Right.
persecution. That's our goal.
Right. Now that's a very balanced way of doing things. And like I said, a lot of things that because a lot of Christians are more, they equate being a Christian with pacifism, right? There's no, we just run away or we get ourselves killed, or this is just the view that many people have. And I'm so glad that you guys provide, do your best in a very horrible situation to provide, all these different areas of need. Now, one thing I like to, people hear, okay, it's a Christian nation or these many Christians now in America, that may sound very different to a bunch of Americans, right? Because Americans may say, I'm Christians, but that those people there are not Christians, but that's not how Muslims see things, is it? Is everybody who claims Jesus Christ, the real Jesus Christ, the third person of the Trinity, the Son of God, and all that, that's it. Those are the enemies of Islam. Am I correct on that?
Yes. Yep. Correct. Exactly.
And the reason I'm asking this because over here, we'll be like, well, you guys over there are not Christian. And, these people over there may think that I hold to the same Jesus you hold to. And then you're going to tell me, so when you say Christian, I think it's very, people in America may disperse that into, lack of a better term, denominations or things, theological boundaries. But over there, those things don't really exist because it can't, right?
Yeah, I mean, they do have different denominations over
Right.
there and whatnot, but the way that we always explain it to people is that because we get those questions all the time, probably more than what I would like to get.
Right.
Is people ask, it's generally, hey, do you help this denomination that we don't like?
Oh,
And
right.
because if so, we gotta tell you how bad you are for helping that denomination.
Right.
And
Right.
and what we always tell them, our standard answer is, when the Muslims go and hold up a gun to somebody, they don't say, what denomination are you? And then
Right.
shoot you. They don't do that. And so, because of that, there is a lot of a coming together. There is a huge unifying
Mm,
factor because ultimately, if you're going to go and say that you are a Christian, whether it's in northern Nigeria or whether you're in the middle belt, it's going to cost you something. It's going to put you in danger. You're going to be loving Jesus Christ. And
mm,
excuse me, one of the things that I love about this, because we are equipping the persecuted. That's our
right.
organization. A lot of mission agencies, and there's nothing wrong with this. They want to send somebody to Nigeria and go and just live there and be there perpetually. We go to Nigeria. I've been to Nigeria several times. We make multiple trips a year to Nigeria. But what we found is most effective is that there is a church in Nigeria. And so we're equipping the church. And,
Mm,
and one of the things that I like to point out to people is I have, as much as we have equipped the church in Nigeria, the Nigerian church has equipped me and has equipped us.
mm,
There are things that we can learn from our brothers and sisters in Christ right there in Nigeria that is so valuable to us. Um, you, you know, I have seen Christians who have lost everything. Their lives are in danger. They've just been absolutely destroyed, and yet they wake up every morning thanking God that they're alive.
mm.
And if they didn't get our mocha right at the coffee shop, we're
Right.
pretty upset here in the United States, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Um, and we like to kind of brush it off and just say, "Oh, first world problems," but really, it's not first world problems; it's heart problems because
Mm,
godliness with contentment is great gain.
right. Right.
And
Right.
a lot of times we don't have that contentment, and which means we're not the ones having the great gain, according to how God
Mm,
puts it. And so when we look at these kinds of things, I think that it's vital for us to understand um, that in Nigeria, though they need our help, we in the West, we really need Nigeria's help as well.
mm,
Though the church in Nigeria needs our help, the church in the West, because we're apathetic.
mm.
No one's going to die for Christ unless they're truly willing to live for Christ. For to me, to
Right.
live
Right.
is Christ, but to die is gain. And that means there are some things that we need to learn from our brothers and sisters in Christ in Nigeria.
So true. Hey, I might or might not tell that you're a pastor from that mini sermon you just
Yeah,
preached, and I'm probably going to take a clip from. And it
praise
was,
the Lord.
it's powerful. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I've had to learn stuff about that. Right? I'm like, wait a minute. I think I'm being too divisive. I think one thing, I looked at, if you read John 17, right? Uh, 4 times Jesus mentions unity, right? That they may be one just as you and I are one, right? He mentions that 4 different times. In the last prayer, he's going to pray right before, it all goes down, and he gets arrested and all that.
Yep.
And we in America, we're like, I'm sorry. Um, you're Anglican, you're Catholic, you're Methodist, you're Paedo Baptist, you're whatever the case may be. I'm sorry, we can't unify because, but that's, but, and you're right. I mean, all that this is produce is, you're right, apathy, lack of unity, showing anybody not Christian they don't want us, they don't need to be with us, and all the time we're blindsided, and Islam is just coming in like a freight train.
Yeah, and I think the problem is we've really lost sight of who Islam is, what Islam is,
Hmm.
um, and Islam. We've really been propagandized in the
Hmm.
West.
Right, right,
And we've bought hook, line, and sinker that Islam can coexist. But Islam, by definition, it means submission. That
right.
is what it means. They're here to put those who aren't Muslims into submission. And what I'm saying isn't politically correct, but it is
Right.
truthful. And
No,
truth, by
absolutely.
definition, is exclusive. And the crazy thing to me is that the things that I'm saying today, I was in 4th grade when 9/11 happened,
Okay.
and I remember, we remember where we were when 9/11 happened.
Right.
And the things that I'm saying today were the same things that people were warning about and telling clear back then. But somewhere along the line, we got politically correct. We got sanitized in the West. We said, we have to be nicer than Jesus. Jesus says in John 14:6, I'm the way, the truth, the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. I'm uh, not sorry to tell people this, but you're only going to get to heaven by going through Jesus Christ.
Right.
So that
Right.
means Muslims have to repent of their sins and turn towards Jesus Christ in order to be saved. And it is something that's different. It's not that we can just coexist, because these are two conflicting ideas. But even more so than that, Islam itself is not just a religion. It's an ideology
Right.
of violence and war. About 70% of the tenets of what they do is an ideology of violence and war. When you look at their theory of abrogation, which
Hmm.
is how they interpret the Quran, because
Right.
it contradicts itself faster than than you can sneeze. I mean,
Right.
it contradicts itself left and right. And so, what the Quran, what they've come to decide is that the Quran, you have to interpret it through through a lens of what was the most recent revelations that
Hmm.
came in. And that's the theory of abrogation, that those are the ones that supersede the earlier revelations.
Okay.
Well, the later revelations are like Surah 9, where it talks about if people don't believe, to slit their throats, if infidels don't believe, to make war against them, and things of that nature. And it's the violent passages that are the ones that are actually in play. Islam, even if there are apathetic Muslims, which there are apathetic Muslims, just like there's a lot of apathetic Christians, there are
Right.
lots of apathetic Muslims, but they will go and culturally take over the apathetic Muslims. They become useful in that way, where they're literally holding ground. But then when
Ooh.
the radicals, is what we like to call them, come in, or those who are practicing Islam come in, those who are apathetic just stay there,
Right.
and they turn their eyes. They don't look at what's happening. They don't care about their neighbor. That
Right.
person who they were just doing business with the day before, they're okay if they get hacked up by a machete, because ultimately they are loyal to Allah.
Right. Right. Right.
And so as Christians, we do need to understand this. I mean, just what happened earlier this week with New York City electing a mayor who is, extremely he's Muslim, and he's extremely pushing the Muslim ideology.
Right.
We need to wake up. We need to see there are enemies in the land, and we need to see what's happening and act
Right.
accordingly.
Now, people would say, but the First Amendment, and they talk about freedom of religion, but they
Mhm.
don't actually read what it says, right? It
True.
says that the government shall make no law, right,
Mhm.
respecting, right? And people don't realize that Islam is Sharia law. It is a
Yeah.
law, and they must enforce it, which is already happening in the U.S., by the way. And they do have Sharia courts within the U.S., so it is another law, right? So it says shall make no law, but it's Sharia law, right? And people cannot grasp this. And I've like you've been to see Islam firsthand. I've seen Islam firsthand. And I feel old now that you told me how old you were when 9/11 happened, because I was already at my second duty station in the army by when it happened. But yeah, we remember, we know, we saw people warned beforehand. People have tried to warn since then, and all you get labeled, oh, Islamophobic, and I'm like, I don't think you even know what that word means. But yeah, I'm so glad that you did talk about how that how Islam um, is a law unto itself, and there is no other option but to submit. And even, um, you know, Boko Haram exists and others like it because they're seeing a lot of other Muslims are not as Muslim as the Quran um, calls Muslims to be.
Right. And, I want to go back to something you touched on, because I think this is
Okay.
important, especially
Yeah.
for Americans and Christians to understand, because you brought up the First Amendment. And I love our founding fathers. I love the founding of our nation. And what I found is that a lot of people haven't really looked into this. And it sounds like you definitely have.
Mhm.
And so I'm excited about that. But for those who are listening, maybe they are appealing to that First Amendment. Well, our founding fathers, when that First Amendment was voted on and passed, and after this, these were some of the circumstances that were in America. First of all, there were blasphemy laws.
Mm.
Um, so there was a famous case where somebody basically came out and said that Jesus was born of a harlot, and really called him illegitimate and things of that nature, and it started a riot. And so this
Mm.
person was put on trial. Now, that person who said that had the right, well, maybe not the right, but he had the ability to not have legal recourse if he were to go and to mutter this all day that he wanted to in his own home. But to go and to say it out in the public, it caused public damages
Mm.
uh, because it started a riot. And so, therefore, he was charged and convicted of blasphemy. We also had tests of religious tests within each, or not each state, but most states at that time, at the time of our founding, where you had to adhere to certain confessions and certainly had to be a Christian in order to just be qualified for public service,
Mhm.
in order to be a governor or a legislator or something like that. And then we also had not just that, but in every state that was there, the Ten Commandments were codified into the law. You see, America was founded as a Christian nation, and
Mm.
the First Amendment right is a freedom of conscience that, yes, you have the right to choose, although you have the responsibility to choose what is right.
Right.
But the second thing that it really is that it is a freedom of Christian religion, in a sense that the state shall make no law. We are not going to choose just what you brought up, a different legal system, because every legal system points to a lawgiver,
Mm.
And what we're going to say is, look, we can't look to Allah to be our lawgiver. Our lawgiver is the God of the Bible. That's where who we've appealed to in our organic laws and the Declaration of Independence, in the Northwest Ordinance. And this is who our Constitution is founded upon. There's a higher law that we're appealing to. And so I think that it would be really helpful for Christians to really familiarize themselves with these kinds of concepts so that we
Mm.
can rightly understand, why don't we want Islam to come in? What's the big deal? Yeah, I mean, maybe they say, I don't want Sharia law, but I also don't want like this crazy Christian laws where our laws are based on the Bible. I want these neutral laws. There's no
Right.
such thing as neutral
Mm-mm.
laws.
True.
They all come from a source. They all come from a lawgiver. And so the question is, who is going to be that lawgiver? And Muslims come in, Islam comes in and says it's going to be Allah. And we
Right.
as Christians need to say, no, it's going to be the God of the Bible because he is the ultimate lawgiver.
Now that's a great explanation. I just learned a few things myself, just from what you spoke on there about the history behind all these things. So that's great. Now we're almost out of time here, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on and taking time out of your schedule to explain these things. And I would love and be honored if we could continue this conversation on Islam and more of this stuff on in future conversations. I don't want to even call it an interview because that sounds very formal to me. But thank you so much for coming on. And so, is there one final thing you would like to say to the audience then?
Yeah, absolutely. So to our audience, I would really encourage you, if you just do these three things with me. The first one is pray. We have to pray for our brothers and sisters in Nigeria who are being slaughtered and displaced from their homes, who are being maimed and wounded. Pray for the persecuted church. God's economy, the economy of faith, is really the currency of prayer, and so we have to be a praying people. So please pray with me for our brothers and sisters in Nigeria. Um, the second thing that I would really ask you to do is to get word out. So take this interview or this conversation. Really, I agree with you. It's not really an
Right.
interview. We've had a conversation here, but take this show and share it, whether that's texting it to your friends or putting it out on your social media or emailing it over to somebody. But please share it with somebody so that they can hear what's happening in Nigeria, so that they can hear all of these things that are going on. And then the third thing I would ask is that if you just prayerfully consider giving to equippingthepersecuted.org. Once again, that's equippingthepersecuted.org. Our organization is a boots on the ground ministry. We've got a team of 150 Nigerians that are right there on the ground. We respond to attacks within 48 hours. We're right there. We're at the bleeding edge of what is happening, of the persecution right there in Nigeria. And so we could use all the help that you can get. But if you could pray, share, and give, that would just be awesome.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I really hope this gets out there. Thank you so much for coming on, Sam. And with that, my audience, I guess I'll be back